There's something about returning to Aincrad after all these years. It's like walking through an old memory, one that's pixelated but still clear where it matters most. It feels like stepping back into a dream you once believed was real. The floating castle above the clouds, the hum of steel against steel, the sound of footsteps on a floor that doesn't really exist. When Sword Art Online first came out, it wasn't just another anime. It was a window, a glimpse into a possible future. A world where people could live and love beyond their physical limits. For many of us, it was also an introduction to what anime could feel like. That strange blend of beauty, loneliness, and quiet hope. But time changes how we see things. Now, more than a decade later, Aincrad doesn't feel like an escape anymore. It feels like a reflection of how we build meaning, even inside spaces that were never meant to last. Because beneath the fantasy, Sword Art Online was always about something simple: how fragile connection can be, and how deeply it shapes us, even in a world made of code. What started as wonder soon became a test of survival. A world where dying meant disappearing for good. At start, we see two players trying to survive. Kirito, the quiet loner who hides behind strength, and Asuna, a determined fighter who learns to live beyond fear. In a world built from code and courage, their paths cross briefly, a spark, not yet a flame. But even in those first moments, you could feel it. The human need to reach out, even when the world feels unreal. And nowhere is that more clear than in one moment, one episode, where it all fell apart. There's something about revisiting this episode years later that cuts even deeper than it used to. Maybe it's because we've lived a little more since then, lost a few things we thought would last, and suddenly, Sachi's voice doesn't sound like just another story. It sounds like a memory. Episode 3: The Red-Nosed Reindeer. For many, it's where Sword Art Online truly began, where the game stopped being a fantasy and became something painfully human. The moonlit black cats. For a brief moment, Kirito found what everyone in that world was searching for: connection, belonging, and warmth. But in Aincrad, even moments like that are temporary. Tragedy arrives without warning, and when it does, the silence that follows is heavier than any death scream. Sachi's last words: "Do your best to go on living. Find the reason why you and I met." They linger like static, not as a message to Kirito alone, but to anyone who's ever lost someone, real or not, in a place that once felt like home. Because connection, even in a world made of data, still leaves an ache when it's gone. That's what makes it real. And when Kirito breaks down on that silent, snow-covered night, begging for a miracle that never comes, you don't see a swordsman. You see a boy who's realizing for the first time that love and loss are inseparable, even here in this world of code and illusion. Maybe that's why Aincrad still lingers after all these years. It wasn't just about survival, it was about learning that every bond, every small moment of trust, comes with the weight of loss. And that somehow, carrying that weight is what makes us human. After loss, what remains? The search for connection, even when you're afraid to feel again. With Silica, Kirito becomes something unexpected, a brother figure. She reminds him of what it means to protect, not because of guilt or survival, but because of genuine care. It's the first time we see him lower his guard, not for love, but for understanding. Their bond is quiet, brief, and tender in a way that contrasts everything around them. a reminder that even in a world of danger, empathy still matters. When Kirito tells her she reminds him of his sister, it's not nostalgia, it's healing. It's proof that connection doesn't need to be romantic to be meaningful. It just needs to be sincere. Then there's Lisbeth, the blacksmith who, for a brief moment, finds warmth in someone who's been lost for too long. She isn't just another encounter, she's someone who reminds Kirito what trust feels like. In that small forge, and later in that frozen crater, their walls lowered just enough to let vulnerability in. Their time together feels like a heartbeat in the cold, fleeting, yet alive. Even though you and I are both data in a virtual world, she says, the warmth I felt was real. It's such a simple line, but it captures the essence of Sword Art Online. The idea that emotion transcends its medium. That even if your world is artificial, what you feel within it isn't. Through Silica and Liz, Kirito starts to understand. Connection isn't weakness. It's the reason to keep moving forward. By the time Kirito and Asuna's bond deepens, the story shifts from survival to something more intimate. They build a life together. Small, quiet moments that feel more real than the battles surrounding them. Cooking, fishing, and talking. A digital life, but a life nonetheless. When they choose to marry inside the game, it's not just symbolism, it's defiance. A declaration that even in a fabricated world, their feelings are their own. Does a relationship only exist in this world? Kirito asks, and Asuna without hesitation answers with a promise. If we make it back to the real world, I'll find you again, no matter what. It's naive, it's pure, it's human. That's what makes it beautiful. Because what they found wasn't perfection. It was courage. The courage to trust, to love, and to keep reaching for each other even when the world itself could vanish. It captures something raw. The hope that connection can survive any boundary, even the boundary between what's real and what isn't. And in a world made of code, that hope became the reality. And when their world finally fell apart, what lingered wasn't the pain. It was the warmth they found in each other. Maybe that's what Aincrad really showed us. That even when everything feels unreal, the emotions we feel are still genuine, still human. It's strange, watching Aincrad again after all these years. Back then, it felt like the future, a world of possibility, adventure, and escape. Now it feels like a memory. Kirito's loneliness, Asuna's courage, Sachi's final words, even the fleeting warmth of a smith's hammer or a younger sister's laughter. We live surrounded by screens, connected yet apart. Our friendships, our laughter, our shared moments. They exist in places we can't touch, but they still matter. And maybe that's what makes Aincrad feel so distant and so close all at once. A world we can no longer enter, yet one that shaped who we are. Because that's what Sword Art Online reminds us of. That connection isn't limited by the world we see, but strengthened by the world we share. Kirito and Asuna's story was never just about surviving. It was about realizing that love doesn't need to be physical to be real. That even when the world disappears, what we felt remains. Because sometimes, even in the most unreal places, we find something undeniably human. Thank you for watching until the end. Thank you.